The night was eerily quiet. The soft hum of crickets outside the cabin was the only sound breaking the silence. Ethan had just settled into his worn leather armchair with a book in one hand and a steaming cup of tea in the other. He didn't expect much from his evening. It was supposed to be just another ordinary night in his quiet life. But then came the knock. It wasn't a regular knock. It was faint, almost hesitant, like someone unsure if they should even be there. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Visitors were rare in his secluded home, nestled miles away from the nearest town. The clock on the wall read 11:23 p.m., far too late for casual calls. His mind raced. Who could it be? Was someone lost? Or worse, was someone in trouble? He set his book aside and approached the door cautiously. The creaking floorboards beneath his feet seemed deafening as he reached for the knob. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door slowly. What he saw made his breath hitch. There on his doorstep was a baby. The infant was wrapped in a thick, tattered blanket, its cheeks flushed from the cold. Its tiny hands peeked out, trembling slightly, and its wide, curious eyes met Ethan's. A single piece of paper was tucked under the blanket, pinned to the baby's chest. Ethan's hand shook as he picked up the note. "Take care of him, please don't ask questions." The handwriting was shaky and rushed, the words smudged as if written in a hurry or through tears. Ethan glanced around, stepping out onto the porch to see if anyone was nearby. The darkness stretched endlessly in every direction. Whoever had left the baby was long gone. "What the—" Ethan whispered to himself, his mind spinning. He knew he should call the police, but something deep inside him hesitated. The baby let out a soft coo, its tiny fingers curling around the edge of the blanket. It was a sound so innocent, so vulnerable, that it pierced right through Ethan's doubt. He stood there, frozen in place, staring at the child. His instinct screamed at him to act, but his mind was caught in a whirlwind of questions. Who would leave a baby here? Why? And most importantly, what was he supposed to do now? Ethan didn't know it yet, but the choice he was about to make would unravel a series of events that would change his life forever. Ethan's cabin was nestled deep in the woods, a sanctuary of solitude he had built after leaving the bustling city life behind. A former journalist, he had spent years chasing stories that often left him disillusioned with the world. The quiet of the forest had been his escapier place, where he could forget the noise, the lies, and the betrayals he had uncovered in his career. The cabin was modest but cozy, with its walls lined with bookshelves, each crammed with titles ranging from investigative journalism to classic literature. The scent of pine and aged wood permeated the air, mingling with the faint aroma of freshly brewed tea. Outside, the towering trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. Ethan lived alone, save for his loyal golden retriever, Max, who was now sitting by the front door, tail wagging cautiously as he sniffed at the unexpected guest. "Calm down, Max," Ethan muttered, still holding the baby in his arms. He carried the child inside, carefully setting the little bundle down on the couch. As he stepped back, Ethan couldn't help but study the baby. It was a boy, no older than a few months, with a tuft of dark hair and round, curious eyes. The blanket wrapped around him was thin and frayed, offering little protection from the cold. Ethan's gaze drifted to the note again, the words etched in his mind. "Take care of him. Please don't ask questions." Questions were Ethan's instinct, his profession, his nature. But tonight, for the first time in years, he felt paralyzed by uncertainty. He glanced at the clock, 11:37 p.m. The nearest town was a 30-minute drive, and the idea of venturing out into the dark woods with an infant didn't sit well with him. He grabbed his phone and dialed the local sheriff's office, only to be met with a flat tone. "No signal," he muttered, throwing the phone onto the counter. Ethan's mind wandered back to his own past that time, when he had felt abandoned and alone. He thought of the nights he spent as a child waiting for his father to come home, only to be met with empty promises and disappointment. He thought of the weight of loneliness, a burden he knew all too well. The baby stirred, letting out a soft whimper that snapped Ethan out of his reverie. Without thinking, he fetched an old quilt from the closet and wrapped it around the child, his movements careful and deliberate. "All right, little guy," he said softly, his voice carrying a warmth he hadn't felt in years. "Let's figure this out." As the baby drifted back to sleep, Ethan found himself pacing the cabin, his mind racing. Who would leave a baby in the middle of nowhere? Was the child in danger? And why had they chosen his doorstep? Ethan's circle of friends was small, consisting mostly of people he had met during his short trips to town. One of them was Martha, the town's baker, a kind-hearted woman in her 60s who often treated Ethan like her own son. Then there was Sam, a mechanic who had once fixed Ethan's old truck and insisted on calling him City Boy, despite knowing he'd been in the woods for years. These were the people he trusted, but none of them could provide answers to the mystery now unfolding in his cabin. He glanced at Max, who had settled by the baby, resting his head on the couch. The dog's calm demeanor gave Ethan a small measure of comfort. By morning, Ethan resolved he would drive into town and figure out what to do. But as he sat there, watching the baby sleep, a strange feeling washed over him, a sense of responsibility he hadn't expected. For years, Ethan had avoided attachments, keeping people at arm's length to protect himself. Yet here he was, faced with a helpless child who needed him. As the hours ticked by, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random event. The baby had been left on his doorstep for a reason, and deep down, he knew this night was only the beginning of something far bigger than he could imagine. The first light of dawn broke through the trees, casting long shadows across the cabin. Ethan hadn't slept a wink. Every time he tried to close his eyes, the image of the baby and that cryptic note flashed in his mind. He sat at the small wooden table, nursing a cup of cold coffee, the baby's soft breathing the only sound in the otherwise still room. Max lay by the couch, keeping a quiet vigil over the infant, his golden fur rising and falling as he dozed lightly. Ethan looked over at them and felt a pang of something he couldn't quite describe. Responsibility, worry, fear. By 7 a.m., Ethan decided he couldn't delay any longer. He carefully bundled up the baby, grabbed his keys, and loaded him into an old car seat he'd found in the Attica relic from when his sister's kids used to visit. As he strapped the child into the back seat, he noticed something odd. The baby had a small bracelet around his wrist, a thin silver chain with a single charm. The letter A. It didn't seem like much, but to Ethan, it felt significant. "Who are you, little guy?" he murmured as he climbed into the driver's seat. The drive to town was uneventful, though Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every shadow on the road, every rustle in the trees felt like something or someone lurking just out of sight. When he finally reached town, he headed straight for the sheriff's office, the baby still asleep in the car seat. The small building stood on the edge of the main street, its faded sign swinging gently in the breeze. Ethan stepped inside, greeted by the familiar face of Sheriff Collins, a burly man in his 50s with a gruff voice and kind eyes. "What brings you in so early, Ethan?" Collins asked, looking up from his desk. Ethan hesitated, his hand tightening around the handle of the car seat. "I found something last night, on my porch." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Found what?" Ethan set the car seat on the desk, pulling back the blanket to reveal the sleeping baby. Collins leaned back, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "Well, I'll be. Where'd this little one come from?" "That's the thing," Ethan said, handing over the note. "I don't know. Someone left him on my doorstep with this." Collins read the note, his brow furrowing. No name, no contact info, nothing. Ethan shook his head. Nothing but the bracelet. The sheriff studied the charm, his lips pursed. This doesn't make any sense. Why would someone leave a baby out there? And why you? Ethan shrugged, his frustration mounting. That's what I was hoping you could help me figure out. Collins nodded, but before he could respond, the door to the station swung open, and a woman in her early 30s burst in, her face pale and frantic. Sheriff, I need your help, she cried. Collins stood, his eyes narrowing. Slow down, Amy. What's going on? My neighbor saw someone creeping around her yard last night. Said they were looking in windows. I think it might have been the same person who's been breaking into cars on our street. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Could the two incidents be connected? All right, Amy, I'll send a deputy to check it out, Collins said, his tone steady. You head home and lock your doors. As Amy left, Collins turned back to Ethan. It's probably just a coincidence, he said, though his tone lacked conviction. Ethan wasn't convinced either. What do I do now? I can't just keep him, can I? The sheriff sighed. Normally, I'd contact social services, but they won't be open for another few hours. For now, just sit tight. I'll make a few calls and see what we can find out. Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. He took the baby back to his car, deciding to stop by Martha's bakery while he waited. The warm smell of fresh bread and pastries greeted him as he stepped inside. Martha was behind the counter, her white apron dusted with flour. Well, if it isn't my favorite recluse, she said with a grin. Her eyes fell to the car seat in his hand, and her smile faltered. Ethan, is that a baby? It's a long story, he said, setting the car seat on a nearby table. Over coffee and a slice of pie, Ethan explained everything. Martha listened intently, her expression a mixture of shock and concern. This doesn't sit right with me, she said when he finished. You are not the kind of man people turn to for help, with a baby, no offense. None taken, Ethan replied with a wry smile. What if this is some kind of trap? She continued. You've made enemies in the past, haven't you? Ethan nodded reluctantly. His career as a journalist had unearthed more than a few skeletons in powerful closets. It wasn't unthinkable that someone might want to hurt him or use a child to manipulate him. As they spoke, the bell above the bakery door chimed, and a man walked in. He was tall, with a sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes. Ethan had never seen him before, but something about the man's demeanor set him on edge. The stranger's eyes flicked briefly to the car seat before settling on Ethan. Cute kid, the man said, his voice smooth but cold. Yours? Ethan tensed, instinctively pulling the car seat closer. Just helping out a friend. The man smirked but said nothing more. He ordered a coffee to go and left, but not before casting one last glance at the baby. Ethan's gut told him the man wasn't just a random customer. And as he watched him walk away, he realized the mystery of the baby was far from over. Ethan couldn't shake the image of the stranger from his mind. His calm demeanor, the way he had zeroed in on the baby at all, felt too deliberate. Something wasn't right. The baby stirred in the car seat, letting out a soft whimper. Ethan glanced down, his resolve hardening. Whatever danger was brewing, he had to protect this child. By the time he returned to the cabin, the sun was climbing higher, casting long beams of light through the trees. Max greeted him at the door, tail wagging, but the unease from earlier still lingered. Ethan placed the car seat on the couch and leaned against the kitchen counter, running a hand through his hair. He needed answers and fast. He decided to start with the only tangible lead, the bracelet. Pulling it gently from the baby's wrist, he examined it closely. The charm with the letter R was simple, but something about it felt personal, like it held more significance than it seemed. Ethan remembered an old contact from his journalism days, a private investigator named Lila. She had helped him dig up information on difficult cases before, and if anyone could trace the origins of this bracelet, it was her. He picked up the phone and dialed her number. Ethan, I thought you were done playing detective, Lila said. her voice tinged with amusement. I thought so too, Ethan replied. But something's come up. I need your help. After a brief explanation, Lila agreed to look into the bracelet's origin. Send me a picture, and I'll see what I can dig up, she said. As the day wore on, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Max seemed on edge too, barking at the slightest noise outside. Around mid-afternoon, there was another knock at the door, this one. Loud and insistent. Ethan froze. He hadn't been expecting anyone. Cautiously, he opened the door a crack, only to find two men standing on his porch. They were dressed in dark suits, their expressions cold and unyielding. Mr. Carter? One of them asked. Ethan's stomach dropped. Who's asking? The man pulled out a badge. Agent Miller, FBI. This is Agent Reyes. We're here about the child. Ethan's grip tightened on the door. What about him? We have reason to believe the child may be in danger, Agent Reyes said. It's imperative that you hand him over to us for his safety. Ethan's mind raced. How did they know about the baby? And why would the FBI be involved? Something about their demeanor didn't sit right with him. I'll need to see some paperwork, Ethan said, trying to buy time. Agent Miller frowned. We don't have time for that, Mr. Carter. This is a matter of national security. National security. The words sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Before he could respond, Max let out a deep growl, his fur bristling as he stood protectively in front of the baby. I'll call the sheriff, Ethan said, closing the door firmly. From the other side, he heard one of the agents mutter, We don't have time for this. Ethan didn't wait to see what they would do next. He locked the door, grabbed the baby, and headed to the back of the house. His old instincts as a journalist kicked in. When in doubt, disappear. Ethan packed a bag with essentials baby formula, diapers, a few changes of clothes and slipped out the back door with Max following closely. The woods surrounding his cabin provided ample cover, but he knew he couldn't stay there long. He made his way to an old trail that led to an abandoned cabin deeper in the forest. A place he had stumbled upon years ago. It was risky, but it was the best option he had. As he navigated the dense underbrush, Ethan's mind raced. Why was the baby so important? Who were those men, and what did they really want? And most importantly, how was he going to keep them safe? The baby let out a soft cry, and Ethan paused, cradling him against his chest. Shh, it's okay, he whispered. I've got you. Max barked quietly, his ears perking up. Ethan froze, listening intently. Footsteps. They were faint but unmistakable. Someone was following them. Ethan quickened his pace, careful to keep his movements silent. Max stayed close, his nose to the ground, occasionally looking back as if to warn Ethan. The footsteps grew louder, more deliberate. Whoever was trailing them wasn't trying to hide anymore. Ethan's heart pounded as he reached the abandoned cabin. It was small and run down, with broken windows and a sagging roof, but it would have to do. He slipped inside, securing the door as best he could and setting the baby down on an old blanket. Max stood by the door, growling softly. Stay quiet, Ethan whispered, pulling out his phone. He tried calling the sheriff, but there was still no signal. Suddenly, a voice called out from the woods. Ethan, we know you are out here. Just give us the child, and no one gets hurt. It was Agent Miller. Ethan's blood ran cold. How had they found him so quickly? Max barked loudly, and the baby began to cry. Ethan scooped him up, rocking him gently as he tried to think. I don't know who you are, Ethan shouted back, but you are not getting him. There was a pause, followed by a chilling reply. Then you leave us no choice. The sound of boots crunching through the underbrush grew closer. Ethan knew he couldn't stay in the cabin. Grabbing the baby and his bag, he pushed open a back window and slipped out. Max closed on his heels. As they disappeared deeper into the woods, Ethan made a silent vow. Whatever it took, He would uncover the truth and protect the baby at all costs. Ethan ran deeper into the woods, the baby's cries muffled against his chest as he held him close. Max led the way, his sharp instincts guiding them through the dense forest. The trees stood like towering walls around them, their shadows growing darker as the evening approached. He didn't know how far he'd gone when he stumbled into a clearing, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The abandoned log-in site was eerily quiet. The rusted remnants of machinery scattered like forgotten relics. It offered no shelter, but at least here, Ethan could see if someone approached. He crouched behind an old skidder, his mind racing. The agents had said the baby was a matter of national security. What could that mean? Was the child connected to some larger conspiracy? As Ethan tried to piece together the puzzle, a sound cut through the stillness, the unmistakable hum of a drone. He looked up to see the device hovering overhead, its red light blinking ominously. Panic surged through him as he realized it wasn't just the agents following him. There was technology tracking his every move. Before he could react, a voice crackled through the clearing, amplified by a loudspeaker. "Ethan Carter, you can't run forever. Hand over the child and we can resolve this peacefully." It was Agent Miller. Ethan's pulse quickened. There was no way he could trust them, not after everything that had happened. He had to think fast. Scanning the area, his eyes fell on an old utility shed near the edge of the clearing. It wasn't much, but it might buy him some time. Keeping low, he dashed toward it, Max backing protectively by his side. Inside the shed, Ethan set the baby down on a dusty workbench. The infant's wide eyes stared up at him, tears streaking his tiny face. Ethan wiped them away gently, his resolve hardening. "You are not just some random kid," he whispered. "Whoever you are, I'll keep you safe. I promise." Max growled at the door, his ears pinned back. The sound of footsteps grew louder, closer. Suddenly, the door burst open. Agent Miller and Agent Reyes stepped inside, their weapons drawn, but pointed down. "It doesn't have to end like this, Ethan," Miller said, his tone measured. "We're not here to hurt you or the child." Ethan stood between them and the baby, his fists clenched. "Then start talking. Who is he? Why is he so important?" Reyes exchanged a glance with Miller, as if weighing how much to reveal. "He's not an ordinary child," Miller finally said. "He's part of a classified government program." Ethan's mind reeled. "What are you talking about? He's just a baby." Reyes stepped forward. "He's more than that. He's unique. His DNA holds the key to breakthroughs in medicine, defense, and technology. But if that information falls into the wrong hands..." "Stop," Ethan interrupted, his voice rising. "You are saying this baby is some kind of experiment?" Miller's jaw tightened. "He was born under controlled conditions, yes, but he's still a child, Ethan. That's why we need to bring him back." Ethan shook his head, his disbelief turning into anger. "You are treating him like a tool, not a person. I am not handing him over to be your lab rat." The agents took a step closer, their weapons still lowered. "You don't understand what's at stake," Reyes said. "There are others looking for him. People who won't hesitate to kill you to get what they want. We're his best chance." As if on cue, the sound of distant gunfire echoed through the woods. Miller cursed under his breath. "They've found us!" Ethan's heart pounded. "Who?" "Private contractors," Reyes said grimly. "Mercenaries hired by foreign interests. If they get him, the consequences will be catastrophic." Ethan looked at the baby, who was now staring up at him with quiet curiosity. His decision was made. "You want to protect him?" he said, his voice steady. "Then help me keep him safe on my terms." Before the agents could respond, a group of armed men appeared at the edge of the clearing. They wore black tactical gear, their faces obscured by masks. "Stay down," Miller shouted, pulling his weapon and firing a warning shot. Chaos erupted as the mercenaries opened fire. Ethan grabbed the baby and ducked behind the workbench, shielding him with his body. Max barked furiously, his protective instincts kicking in. Amid the gunfire, Ethan noticed something strange. The baby, who should have been wailing in terror, was completely calm. In fact, he was smiling. A strange warmth radiated from the child, and for a moment, Ethan felt a sense of clarity and focus unlike anything he'd ever experienced. What the? He muttered, glancing down at the baby. Reyes noticed too. It's happening, she said, her voice filled with awe. What's happening? Ethan demanded, but there was no time for an answer. The mercenaries were closing in, their bullets ripping through the shed. Miller and Reyes returned fire, but they were outnumbered. Suddenly, the baby let out a soft, cooing sound and the air around them seemed to ripple. The bullets stopped mid-air, suspended as if frozen in time. The mercenaries hesitated, their weapons faltering. Ethan stared in disbelief as the baby's eyes glowed faintly, a soft blue light emanating from his tiny form. What is he? Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. Reyes turned to him, her expression a mix of fear and reverence. He's the future. The ripple of energy faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving the clearing eerily silent. The mercenaries, now disoriented, retreated into the woods. Ethan looked down at the baby, who had fallen back asleep, as if nothing had happened. Miller lowered his weapon, his face pale. Now you see why he can't fall into the wrong hands. Ethan nodded slowly, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. I'll help you protect him, he said, but we're doing this my way. Miller and Reyes exchanged a look before nodding in agreement. Then let's move, Miller said. This isn't over. The group moved swiftly through the forest, guided by Miller and Reyes, who seemed to know the terrain better than Ethan expected. The baby slept peacefully in Ethan's arms, as if unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded. Max padded along silently, his sharp eyes scanning the shadows for any signs of danger. By the time they reached the agent's safe house, a hidden bunker built into the side of a hill, the sun was beginning to set. The structure was stark and utilitarian, with reinforced steel doors and a sparse interior that suggested functionality over comfort. Inside, Miller activated a secure communication line, speaking in hushed tones to someone on the other end. Meanwhile, Reyes began unpacking supplies, her movements brisk and efficient. Ethan sat down on a worn leather couch, cradling the baby. He glanced down at the infant, who now seemed impossibly fragile, despite the extraordinary power he had witnessed earlier. You owe me answers, Ethan said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Reyes sighed, sitting across from him. You are right. You deserve to know the truth. She leaned forward, her tone softer now. The child's name is Aiden. He's the result of a classified government project called Genesis. Genesis? Ethan repeated, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. It was an experiment to unlock the full potential of human DNA, Reyes explained. Aiden's mother was part of the program, a brilliant geneticist who volunteered to carry the first viable subject. She believed it would lead to breakthroughs in curing diseases, extending life, and even preventing conflict by enhancing human empathy. Ethan frowned. That doesn't explain why someone left him on my doorstep. Miller, now off the call, joined the conversation. Aiden's mother went rogue when she realized the was being hijacked for military purposes. She wanted to protect her son, so she smuggled him out of the facility and disappeared. We believe she's the one who left him with you. Ethan's mind reeled. Why me? I've never met her in my life. She knew about your work, Reyes said. Your investigations, the way you exposed corruption. She thought you'd do the right thing. Ethan leaned back, his thoughts swirling. It made a twisted kind of sense, but it didn't make the situation any less overwhelming. So what happens now? He asked, his voice heavy with exhaustion. We need to move him to a secure facility. Miller said. Somewhere, the mercenaries and anyone else after him can't reach. Ethan shook his head. You think locking him away is the answer? He's a child, not a weapon. Reyes hesitated. It's not ideal, but it's the only way to keep him safe. Ethan looked down at Aiden, his tiny fingers curled around the edge of the blanket. He thought about the power he had seen, the way the baby had stopped bullets mid-errand. The innocence in his gaze. No, Ethan said firmly. There has to be another way. The room fell silent. Miller and Reyes exchanged a glance, then nodded. If you have a better idea, we're listening, Miller said. Ethan took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts. We don't just hide him. We expose the people behind Genesis. If they're willing to send mercenaries to hunt down a baby, they're too dangerous to operate in the shadows. Miller frowned. You want to go public? That could put Aiden at even greater risk. Not if we do it right, Ethan countered. We leak enough information to force their hand, to make it impossible for them to operate without scrutiny. And we find Aiden's mother, she's the key to all of this. Reyes leaned back, considering his words. It's a risk, but it might be our best shot at keeping him safe long term. Miller sighed. Fine, but we'll need resources, connections, and it won't be easy. Ethan nodded. I know, but if it means giving him a chance at a real life, it's worth it. As the group hashed out the details of their plan, the tension in the room began to ease. Aiden stirred in Ethan's arms, his eyes fluttering open. He let out a small, happy gurgle, and Ethan couldn't help but smile. You are a fighter, aren't you? He murmured, gently brushing a hand over Aiden's head. Reyes leaned back, considering his words. It's a risk, but it might be our best shot at keeping him safe long term. Miller sighed. Fine, but we'll need resources, connections, and it won't be easy. Ethan nodded. I know, but if it means giving him a chance at a real life, it's worth it. As the group hashed out the details of their plan, the tension in the room began to ease. Aiden stirred in Ethan's arms, his eyes fluttering open. He let out a small, happy gurgle, and Ethan couldn't help but smile. You are a fighter, aren't you? He murmured, gently brushing a hand over Aiden's head. As Ethan sat in the quiet of the bunker, the events of the past 48 hours replayed in his mind like a fragmented film. The chaos, the danger, and the revelations, it all seemed like a whirlwind. Yet it brought clarity to one undeniable truth. Life is defined by the choices we make, especially when they challenge our very nature. Ethan had spent years isolating himself from the world, convinced that his role as an investigator had already fulfilled his duty to uncover the truth. But holding Aiden in his arms, seeing the trust and innocence in the baby's eyes, had reminded him of something he had forgotten: the power of hope and the responsibility to protect it. He realized that the courage to do what's right doesn't always come from grand ideals or personal ambition. Sometimes it comes from the simplest moments: a cry for help, a knock on the door, or the vulnerable grip of a child's tiny hand. And so, as the night stretched on and the weight of his decision settled on his shoulders, Ethan made a silent vow: to fight, to uncover the truth, and to give Aiden the future he deserved, no matter the cost.